Hello and welcome back to yet another week of Bobson Rants while playing Team Fortress 2 badly. Haha. Now, there was not an episode last week because I got a bit sidetracked by playing Chroma Gun, and there was an episode of that last Saturday, so there was not an episode of Bobson Rants, sadly. But I'm back this week, and this week I want to talk about something that I've been watching and and noticing in various forums and stuff like that, which is people arguing about Steven Universe as well as other kind of animated stuff. And it's not. I'm not just going to talk about Steven Universe. I'm going to talk about animation in general, modern animation, and maybe something about older animations. I'm not really sure if I'll get into that, but what I want to talk about is people arguing over Steven Universe. Now, those of you who don't know what Steven Universe or care or are just sick of hearing about it, the reason there's been so much discussion about it on various forums and stuff like that I've been going to is simply because there's a bunch of new episodes of it coming out on Cartoon Network every single weekday, and people are watching it, people are talking about it, people are arguing about it, people are complaining about it. And I'm not going to get into the various story of the show itself. It's been argued about too much. What I am going to talk about was one of the complaints I saw about Steven Universe and about modern animation in general is the character designs, the animation quality, and stuff like that. And I can see where they're coming from because I've watched Steven Universe. I've watched a number of cartoons, modern cartoons, mainly because I see people arguing about them. I see people complaining about them. And I don't want to just take someone's opinion on something like that. I want to make my own opinion, have my own opinion, have my own thoughts. So I watch those kind of shows. I catch a few episodes, I see what they're about, and I make my own decision based on it. And I don't mind Steven Universe. It seems okay. It seems like a nice show. I liked Amazing World of Gumball as well, Gravity Falls and stuff like that. I watch those shows simply to form my own opinion. And I can see where people are coming from when they talk about the lack of diversity in animation styles and animated and artistic styles and stuff like that. Because one of the images I saw posted on one forum was a basic outline of a character's head. It had no distinguishing features, no ears or eyes or anything, just the mouth smiling. And next to it was a picture of Steven Universe. And next to that was a picture of Star Butterfly from Star vs. the Forces of Evil. And below that was the Pine Twins from Gravity Falls and Gumball from The Amazing World of Gumball. Now, all of these characters were completely interchangeable. Their entire thing was interchangeable with that original just character head outline. Everything about it was just generically the same. So there was no real difference between the two. And I can see where people are complaining about. I can see what people are arguing about in that regard. There's no real difference with those character designs because of that. And what people blame in part is Cal Arts, I think. A lot of the newer animators and new character designers are coming out of Cal Arts Animation School. And yeah, a lot of that is from that, I guess. That's basically the design kind of aesthetic they're coming out of that animation school with. And yeah, but then another thing is the people they're with, the people they're learning from, the people they're working with. Because a lot of the people who have created these cartoons, a lot of the people who have made their own cartoons, like Rebecca Sugar. That's her name, Rebecca Sugar, I think. I might be wrong. I don't remember her name. I'm sorry. But Sugar is worked on a number of different cartoons. I think she worked on, what was it, Adventure Time? And she probably learned a lot about animation while working there. A lot of stuff from working with other animators there. And that's what happens. People who are in the business, people who are working on these various shows, they interact with other animators, they interact with other writers and storyboard artists and directors and editors and all that kind of stuff, and they learn what various art styles work, what various art styles are popular, and they base what characters they're going to design for their own shows around that. And let's face it, the current design of stuff like Steven Universe is what's popular, it's what everyone's doing. It's what Disney characters are being done like on Star vs. Forces of Evil, on Gravity Falls, on Gumball, on Steven Universe, and that's just a design element that's out there right now. And I can see why the studios would be happy with this, because it means that it would more likely draw in an audience from another show. If there's one show that's really popular with a certain design, and you have a new show that has a similar design to it, then kids that are watching that other show might come to that new show and start watching it. And that's another thing. These cartoons are for children. I'll talk about that in a moment. But yeah, that's the basic idea of it. It's just a design element. It's just a current artistic style. It's just what's currently done. I mean, it's nothing new. It's the kind of thing that's been happening forever in animation. I mean, you go back like 10, 15 years, and you had the Dexter's Lab style animation, the aesthetic and animated quality, not animated, artistic style, and that carried over into stuff like Powerpuff Girls, and later Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends and stuff like that, and other Cartoon Network shows had similar artistic styles. The main reason was the creators of the later shows that came after Dexter's Lab came from Dexter's Lab. They were storyboard artists, they were animators, they were people who worked on that show and got their own shows picked up and produced by Cartoon Network. So they had those kind of design elements in mind when they went there. So that's the kind of thing that happens. It's just a network. It's just the same pool of talent that gets pulled from to make the new shows, and it's just they basically have the same ideas, the same kind of design elements, the same kind of artistic style. And that's the reason. That's the real reason behind it, to be honest. But yeah, like I said before, these cartoons are designed for children. I have watched them. Like I said, I wanted to form my own opinion on them, whether or not they were complete crap. Hell, I've even watched My Little Pony. As odd as that sounds, I am not a brony, but I have watched My Little Pony simply because I wanted to form my own opinion on the show. Not because I wanted to watch it, not because I really, really liked the cartoon, but because I didn't want someone else to dictate what is good, what is bad to me, and just go with it. So yeah, I've watched a lot of cartoons. But if you're like 20, 30 years old, and you're sitting on a forum arguing about Steven Universe, about the animation quality, about the storylines, about the various characters, then why are you doing that? I'm sorry, but why? It's a show for it's a cartoon for kids. It's for little kids. That's the target demographic. Just like Gumball's the target demographic is little kids. I mean, this is a Cartoon Network show. It's run during the day, during the evening. It's not an Adult Swim show. It's not a show that's on late at night. It's a friggin' cartoon for kids. And that's the target demographic, to be perfectly honest. And let's face it, kids don't really care about the design elements as long as it has flashy colors, enough fart jokes to keep them happy and giggling, and enough silly action and whatever comedy to make them laugh and make them enjoy the show. That's all that really matters. Everything else, all the subtext people like to read into the show, all the little hints and nods to the parents and stuff that are watching the show with their kids, that's all just sprinkled in there for the parents to enjoy. I mean, this is the kind of thing that's been going on for the past 20, 25 years in cartoons, going back to the Nicktoons of the 90s and like that. But yeah, it's not for adults, it's not for us, it's for the kids, it's for them. So yeah, complaining about the design elements and the lack of originality, not the best use of your time. Come on, guys and or ladies. So yeah, and I mean, design elements have been used and copied and reused and borrowed from different animation studios forever. As long as cartoons have been around, they've been stealing and maybe not stealing, just borrowing design elements from each other and using them in multiple characters, multiple studios over the years, even going back to the Disney days, the original Walt Disney days and the original Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck and cartoons like that in the late 30s, 40s, and 50s and like that. They borrowed animation styles. They borrowed character movements, the wild, crazy movements. Every character that Warner Brother made has a similar style to it, has a similar uh, animation style, similar character design to them. And same thing with the Disney characters that were designed back then. And one of the elements that I always found odd that I could never really explain was the fact that all the cartoon characters back then had large white gloves, large rounded fingers, a weird band around their wrist, and I don't know why, but it's the same kind of thing as the reason why they only have 4 fingers instead of 5. Probably just an animation thing to make the hand stand out or something. I don't really know. But it's just weird, and one of those things that just was across every spectrum of the cartoons back then. But yeah, there wasn't really that much diversity in animation or stories or anything back then. It was all the same basic story over and over again in every Bugs Bunny cartoon, every Daffy Duck cartoon. The characters were basically interchangeable, and they had the same basic stories, same basic plots, just remade over and over again. And it was fairly simple and straightforward. I mean, these cartoons weren't even made for like television because television didn't exist. It was all just 5-10 minute long cartoons just to fill out time in movie theaters. They'd play them before the movie starts, in between movies, while they were changing the reels over for double features and stuff like that, or something, or changing it for a newsreel or something. Because there was no television. That's how people got news. That's how people saw film of foreign wars and stuff like that, was back then in movie theaters. And that's where the cartoons were shown. And that's what they were for. They were just little snippets of animation just to entertain people. So yeah, it wasn't necessarily directed exclusively at children, which is why they were able to get away with some things that really would not really be able to get away with modern cartoons. But yeah. But it changed over time. As the cartoons became more and more stale, as they became more of just the same thing over and over again, the same exact plots. If you go back and watch all those old Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck and Porky Pig cartoons, it's always the same thing over and over again. Over and over. Every single story, every single plot, every single action, it's just the same thing. They just keeps getting remade over and over again. And it got a bit stale over time. But once they invented television, once newer shows came about, the whole idea of just 10-minute long rehashes of the same thing just stopped going. I mean, it just wasn't worth it. I mean, there was one point they started just chopping up old Bugs Bunny cartoons and making new ones out of it, stitching them together to make new ones out of clips from old cartoons. I've seen those. I've seen them. And it's just so weird because I've seen the original cartoons that those clips came from. But yeah. But that's all changed in like the 60s with the stuff like Hanna-Barbera was coming out with. Hanna-Barbera reshaped the way cartoons were made. They reshaped the way cartoons were done. But even then, they still had very similar styles. They still had very similar character designs to even across the various shows they were doing, all had that same kind of character design. They had the Flintstones, they had Yogi Bear. Excuse me. They had Yogi Bear, they had Flintstones, they had who else was it? Who else? What was the cartoons? I cannot remember. I wasn't alive in the 70s. I just saw the reruns over time. Magilla Gorilla, Adamant, who else can I remember? But the basic idea was that all had the same kind of style to the characters. One of the things I really remember about all the various characters and the style they used was all the male characters had this weird oval shape around their mouth, and it always had this kind of 5 o'clock shadow thing going on, like they had just stubbly beards. And yeah, that was something that was prevalent in Flintstones, in Yogi Bear, in any character, any show that had like a male human character that wasn't just a weird bear or something. Even the bears, even Yogi Bear had that kind of thing going on. And it was weird, but it was just the style of the studio back then. And that's one thing that people don't really realizes all back then it was all the studios. All the studios controlled everything, from the character designs to the stories to everything that was going on. So, yeah, there wasn't really room for originality. There wasn't really room for individual artistic styles or anything. It was all, the entire Hanna-Barbera cartoon lineup was all just the studio, the Hanna-Barbera film company. What was it? A film company or a studio? What was it called? I don't know. But yeah, it was all that. And they decided, it was the executives deciding what was made. It was the executives deciding what characters would be used, and it was they had some level of artistic freedom with character design and stuff like that, but it wasn't like it was today. So yeah, that kind of explains why all of it was kind of similar. I mean, there was stuff like Scooby-Doo, like Space Ghost, like the Herculoids, and other cartoons that came out of Hanna-Barbera, but those were more action or mystery solving kind of things, so they had a slightly different artistic style to them, though they still had that Hanna-Barbera feel. But yeah. But anyone complaining about today's cartoons, anyone who is complaining about modern cartoons, I dare you to compare them to the 80s, because I grew up in the 80s. And let me just say, I loved cartoons back when I was back in the 80s. Back when I was watching the original Transformers, G.I. Joe, all those cartoons, I loved them back then. But holy crap, I've just rewatched a bunch of the old cartoons from the 80s, the original Transformers, the original G.I. Joe, because it gets rerun on this high number cable channel on my TV at like 3-4 o'clock in the morning. And holy crap, rewatching that just makes me realize how bad those cartoons were. And if you don't believe me, you're just thinking of it remembering it through rose-tinted goggles, because damn it, it was so bad. It was so bad. The plots were formulaic, the characters were one-dimensional, they were just simple hero-villain archetypes that were predictable and just unoriginal. And the animation quality in those shows, the writing quality, was just lacking horribly. And the reason is because throughout the 80s, most cartoons were just 30-minute long toy commercials. And I mean this quite literally. Hasbro and, what was it? Hasbro and Mattel. Hasbro and Mattel, they were the ones behind it. They basically came up with a toy idea and decided, hey, how can we sell this toy? How can we sell this toy to kids? And somebody would come up with the idea, hey, let's make a cartoon to go along with it. So they would toss a little bit of money, a slight bit of money at this animation studio, and they would make a cartoon around it. They would come up with some crappy story, some crappy plot. They would do as good a job as they could with the budget they were given. But animation quality, writing quality was kind of an afterthought because they just didn't have the budget to really do it. And the entire point was just to sell toys to kids. It was literally a 30-minute toy commercial, and that was the entire point. With stuff like Transformers, G.I. Joe, My Little Pony, Care Bears. Holy crap, I just remembered Care Bears existed. Holy crap, that just popped into my mind. I had completely forgotten those things existed. I really wish I had not remembered it. I hated Care Bears when I was a kid. I really did hate the cartoon. I hated the toys. It really annoyed me every time I would go to the toy aisle and there'd just be a wall of Care Bears. It really annoyed me. I don't remember why. I just didn't like it. But yeah, My Little Pony never annoyed me that badly, but Care Bears did. I just hated them. But yeah, that was just what the 80s were. It was just pure wall-to-wall corporate shilling of toys. And now it got a lot better in the 90s because for some reason a switch clicked off in some executive's mind over at Nickelodeon, and they realized, hey, what would happen if we gave creative control of a cartoon show to the person who created the character? I don't know who it was that came up with this idea, but I love you, whoever you are. If you're still alive out there, thank you for saving animation. Because at Nickelodeon, they decided to do this. They decided to give creative control over to the person who actually created the cartoons. And we got stuff like Rugrats, stuff like Rocko's Modern Life, Doug, Hey Arnold, Ren and Stimpy. And say what you want about John Kay, but Ren and Stimpy was a good cartoon. It was the epitome of creator-driven madness, and as weird as it was, you could not get away with that if it wasn't for the fact that it was a creator-driven cartoon. Holy crap. But yeah, all modern animation, all the newer cartoons that come out, owe their existence to the fact that Nickelodeon did that back in the 90s, that they allowed the creators to take control, take the reins, and drive their own cartoon shows. Because if it wasn't for that, if it had not worked out, if it had not been popular enough to be profitable, to be entertaining, to make the audience happy, we wouldn't have the modern cartoons we have today. Because cartoons like that were not really there in the 80s or even in the 70s. I mean, there were enjoyable cartoons in the 70s and even in the 80s, but what they did at Nickelodeon back in the 90s was the creators made the cartoons they wanted to make. And you can see this in stuff like Rocko's Modern Life, which had tons of simple, cartoonish, wacky plots that would keep children entertained, but it also had so much subtext, so much background stuff, so many jokes that would just fly over the kid's head, and at the same time makes the parents burst out laughing. The kids would be laughing at the fart joke, the parents would be laughing at the intellectual humor that just went on. And that's something that just went over the kid's head. And if you were a fan of stuff like that in the 90s, go rewatch it. You will see things, you will hear jokes in those cartoons that you never got when you were a kid. I rewatched Rocko's Modern Life a couple years ago, and I was laughing my ass off for an entirely new reason. I mean, Choky Chicken. I never got that when I was a kid. Choky Chicken. Oh, so funny. And I can't believe they got away with it. But yeah, I don't understand why people are so upset about the lack of animation diversity into modern cartoons. That's the basic idea of what I was talking about originally in this rant. And yeah, I don't know. As long as it has a good plot, as long as children are being entertained by it, and the parents and their older siblings can watch it and enjoy it with them, and go on internet forums and argue about whatever subtext and background plots the kids aren't even caring about, while they're laughing about the fart jokes, the older brothers and sisters, the parents are going on friggin' forums just arguing about some weird plot point that hasn't been revealed yet, or some other random stuff. As long as the kids are happy, it's a good cartoon. Who cares if it doesn't have immensely original animation or character designs? As long as they're happy, it's a good cartoon. And let them be happy. Let them make what they want. Let the creators design however they want, because that's just the design as it is today. A few years from now, a new design will pop up that'll be popular, and everyone will copy it, and the current designs will be thrown out the window. So yeah, I don't know. That's just something I wanted to talk about this week. And I've been going for, holy crap, I've been going for like 20, 25 minutes now. A bit longer than normal. But I guess that's to make up for a lack of a rant last week. So anyway, thanks for watching. This has been Bobson. This has been another episode of Bobson Rants. And until next time, hopefully I will have another episode next week. Or I might just do another one-shot episode of something. I don't know. But it depends on what I can figure out I want to talk about. Because this was something that I just thought up on the spur of the moment over the past few days. So anyway, thanks for watching. And until next time, I will see you later. Bye.